In this video, we'll discuss authentication. Authentication involves verifying a claimed identity. To verify an identity, we need some unique information or data that could only come from that individual. Three main factors are used in authentication: something you know, something you have, and something you are. First, let's look at something you know. This commonly used authentication method is knowledge-based. It requires the user to provide information that only they know. The most familiar example is a password. The password is something that only the user should know for their authentication. A PIN is another example of something you know authentication. Unlike a password, a PIN is limited to numerical digits. Another example is cognitive information. This is when a question is provided that only the user can answer. Often, for account recovery methods, a company will ask users to supply answers to specific questions, such as your mother's maiden name or the name of your first pet. The next authentication type, something you have, is sometimes called token-based authentication. Hard tokens require the user to possess a physical factor, an object such as a smart card, key fob, or a USB device that can be used for authentication. Soft tokens are software that can be installed on a user's smartphone, tablet, or computer. Soft tokens generate one-time passwords, or OTPs, that are used for authentication. When users attempt to log in, they must enter their username and password and then generate or receive an OTP from the soft token application. The OTP is time-limited and changes periodically, usually every 30 seconds. This adds an extra layer of security since OTP is unique for each login attempt and cannot be easily replicated or reused by an attacker. The third factor, something you are, refers to physiological attribute biometrics. Your fingerprint, retinal scan, vein scan, face scan, or voice print will prove that you are who you say you are. On their own, some of these authentication methods could be easily compromised. A password can be written down, guessed, or shared. A smart card can be lost or stolen. When two or more of these factors are combined, this is known as multi-factor authentication. When the requirement for a password is combined with a token-generated PIN or combined with a fingerprint scan, accessing an account becomes much more complicated. With multi-factor authentication, a username and password can be breached but are unusable without the additional factor. While we've talked about the three main authentication factors, other factors can be used to help validate authentication: somewhere you are, something you do, something you exhibit, and someone you know. While these may not verify a user's identity independently, they help improve security and work well in multi-factor authentication settings. Somewhere you are authentication uses a physical location to verify a user's identity. For example, you may have a desktop system configured to allow authentication requests only if the user has passed through the building's entrance using their ID card. If the user tries to log into the desktop, the system will look to see if the user has entered the building. If not, the user's account is locked. The location could be determined using radio frequency identification or an RFID proximity reader. If the user is within range, they're authenticated to the system. The user moving out of range automatically locks the system. GPS location data can also be used to unlock mobile devices. For example, your phone can be automatically unlocked within a specific geographical area. If it moves outside that location, it'll be locked and require a PIN or password to unlock. Bluetooth can also be used for this type of authentication. If you're in range of a device via Bluetooth, you can configure your mobile device to unlock itself automatically. Another authentication type is something you do. This type requires the user to perform a particular action to verify the user's identity. For example, the user might be required to supply a handwriting sample analyzed against a baseline sample. It could also require a typing test, where the user must type some sample text and their typing behaviors are analyzed against a baseline sample. Another attribute could be something you exhibit, such as a personality trait or a habit. Authentication systems can note the time of day you usually log on, your access method, or the tasks you often perform. When administrators notice unusual activity or risky behavior, they may restrict access to these users. This could mean requiring a password change, another authentication method, or blocking user access. Another authentication factor is someone you know. You've probably heard the phrase, "It's not what you know, it's who you know." Having someone who can vouch for you can go a long way to establishing relationships and building trust. The same is true for authentication. An example of this trust is certificates. Certificate authorities issue certificates to organizations that they trust. These organizations are intermediary certificate authorities who then issue certificates to their users. This creates a chain of trust that verifies that the subject named in the certificate can be trusted and has been verified by a certificate authority. Certificates are commonly used for logging into secure sites or signing documents electronically. A user must provide the correct credentials to authenticate a system, usually a username and password. After that, the system checks an access service or protocol to ensure a match with existing credentials. The authentication process itself doesn't determine your authorization level. In other words, authentication doesn't determine what you can access. It only defines who you are. The application determines your authorization level and what you can do with the application only after you authenticate to the system. Let's look at a few authentication methods you need to know as a security professional. Single sign-on, or SSO, is an authentication process that allows users to access multiple systems, applications, websites, and other resources using only a single set of credentials. With SSO, a user authenticates once using designated credentials and can access different resources seamlessly. Imagine that you need to log into your workstation, log into the company portal, log in to check your emails, and then log in again to access your video conferencing software. Instead of assigning 4 different credentials, it would be better to implement an SSO. Since this service shares authentication sessions between systems, you automatically receive access to all the sessions if you log into one. While SSO dramatically improves usability, it comes with the risk that breached credentials can be used to gain access to a wide array of resources. Considering SSO provides powerful, seamless access to a wide range of sensitive systems and data using only a single set of credentials, multi-factor authentication methods should be coupled with SSO to prevent credentials from being easily abused and stolen. Directory services provide a single sign-on location for multiple network resources. Examples include Microsoft's Active Directory and LDAP directory services. Directory services users sign on with a domain user account to gain access to available domain resources. Another authentication method is OAuth. Although OAuth works closely with authentication services, it doesn't provide authentication services itself. Instead, OAuth provides authorization services. In other words, it authorizes an entity to obtain information but doesn't verify the entity itself. OAuth lets a third party access a user's information from another website without a password. It acts as an intermediary between 2 entities and provides access tokens that manage the exchange of specific information. OAuth has a few main components. It starts with a user wanting to access multiple apps without creating many new accounts. Next, you need the client software app on a computer, mobile phone, or any other smart device. You also need a resource server that the user and client are trying to access, and an authorization server that provides a token for the user and client to access the resource server. Let's say that I just installed an app onto my phone. When I open the new app, I'm prompted to log in using my Facebook or Google account. I decide to use my Facebook account, so I'm redirected to Facebook's authorization server to get an access token. The authorization server authenticates you as the user, and the app uses OAuth to grant an access token with precise information from the app. Now, when the app goes to the resource server with that token, you're registered and logged into the app with limited access to your Facebook information. So, where's the authentication? Well, that's where OpenID Connect, or OIDC, comes in. OIDC is built on the OAuth framework and provides the needed authentication service. Remember, OAuth only provides authorization. OIDC takes it a step further and provides identity authentication. OIDC also accesses stored personal information and preferences from an identity layer that the user has previously disclosed. This layer provides the website with the user's information, where, when, and how of the authentication, and which attributes the user wants to share with that specific website, and why. Big companies like Google and Microsoft use OIDC, so it's secure and reliable. Another authentication method is a federation. A federation is a group of domains that established enough trust to share authorizations with each other. A federation can be used within a single organization with multiple domains, or include several trusted organizations that want to pool their resources. The good thing about this authentication method is that everything's on-site, providing the administration with detailed access control levels. Another authentication method is attestation. Attestation is a protocol that proves that software can be trusted. It tells the remote user that the software is legitimate and certified. Attestation usually works in both parties' interest. For example, say I was going to log into my bank account. I'd want to make sure that the site that I'm logging into is trustworthy, and the bank would like to be sure that I am really the one who is trying to log into my account. That's it for this lesson. In this lesson, we talked about several different authentication methods. These include single sign-on, directory services, OAuth, federation, and attestation. As a security professional, knowing and understanding these authentication methods will benefit you immensely in your future endeavors.